Hello everyone. Have you ever heard of a man by the name of Bartimaeus in the Bible? You can find his story in the book of Mark, and it's chapter number 10, and it's verses numbers 46 through 52. Now, Bartimaeus, he was blind, and he had to wear a specific garment that marked his blindness, that told people of his infirmity, which warned them, don't go near him, don't talk to him, don't socialize with him. They could not have anything to do with them, and he could not interact with them. And it must have been a lonely life for him. Now in the Bible, we find that there are many types of garments. There's many colors of garments. There's many textures of garments that were used for specific things, or they represented specific things. And for Bartimaeus and his garment actually was for two purposes. One, to mark him as a man of no worth, that you just leave him alone. And second, he used this garment to spread out on the ground so that he could catch any change that was thrown to him. And this was the money, the only money that he had to survive on, to eat on. And it was his only source of income. So on one particular day, Bartimaeus was begging. It was a busy day in the city, because a lot of the people were passing through Jericho, where Bartimaeus was, going to Jerusalem. But not only were just random people passing through, going through to Jerusalem, Jesus and his disciples was also passing through Jericho on this specific day. So day after day, Bartimaeus sat on the roadside, begging for food, begging for money, begging for help. But there was something else that was happening as well, because as he was begging, he was listening to the people who walked by him. And there was a lot of people talking about the ministry of Jesus and what was happening with Jesus and the miracles that he was performing, and there was excitement about these miracles. So not only was these roads busy in Jericho, but they also were known as dangerous as well. It was a dangerous time and a dangerous part of the city to travel through. So every day, Bartimaeus would stop people, asking them for the news for the day. He was asking them, have you heard anything else about Jesus? Have you heard anything else about any miracles that he performed? I want to hear about it. I want to know what's going on. So as Bartimaeus heard what Jesus was doing, can't you imagine that maybe in the back of his mind, he was beginning to think, if he's performing all of these miracles for everyone else, maybe, just maybe, there's a chance that if he passed by my way, that I might receive my sight back. So on this particular day, the crowds were loud and there was a lot going on. But he heard some of the people say that Jesus was getting ready to pass by. Despite his disability, despite his infirmity, despite that he was labeled a beggar, which should have discouraged him, but it did not. Because of the noise of the crowd and the loudness of the crowd, Bartimaeus knew that something was about to happen. He said, "What's going on?" And someone told him, Jesus is getting ready to pass by. Despite the crowd, despite his disability, despite being marked as a beggar and labeled as a person of no worth, he should have been discouraged, but it made him even more bold to try to get to Jesus. With the loudness of the crowd, Bartimaeus knew that something was about to happen. Despite his infirmity, despite him being labeled as one of no worth, despite his disability and him being a beggar, and all of this that should have discouraged him, made him even more want to get to Jesus. What did Bartimaeus do? He began to cry out to Jesus. Sometimes, despite the impossibility of our circumstances, we have just got to cry out to Jesus. Bartimaeus' attention on this day turned from begging to Jesus. Now, this was a big deal because this money was his survival. But he took his attention off of that and he put his attention onto Jesus and getting to Jesus for his healing. Despite the crowd, despite his disability, as Jesus passed by, Bartimaeus began to call out to Jesus. And he just didn't say it with this quiet voice. He yelled out to Jesus, "Son of David, have mercy on me. Son of David, have mercy on me." With everything within him, with his healing that he believed that was going to happen today, he called out to Jesus with everything that he had within him. Can I tell you that on this day that Bartimaeus was not taking no for an answer? He was saying, "Get out of my way. I am getting to Jesus today." Bartimaeus was strictly going by faith because he couldn't have seen the miracles that Jesus performed, but he was only going by what he heard from the crowd of the people who were passing by him. The Bible tells us that Jesus stopped in his tracks when he heard someone yelling out his name. Now the people in the crowd tried to make Bartimaeus to be quiet and tell him to stop. "You're not supposed to be doing this. You're not supposed to be calling out to people. You are marked as a nobody, invaluable. Jesus is not going to stop and talk to you." The crowd was trying to tell Bartimaeus not to speak unless you are spoken to. This was their moral code because of his blindness, because of his infirmity, and because of his worthlessness to them. But can I tell you that this made him cry out all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me. Son of David, have mercy on me." Bartimaeus would not be silenced. He continued to yell out, "Son of David, have mercy on me. Son of David, have mercy on me," without stopping, without a pause, without a hesitation. He continued to call out to Jesus so that he could be healed. So Jesus, when he stopped and looked around and seen who was calling out his name, told some of the people in the crowd, "Get him and bring him to me." And so the people went to Bartimaeus, the one that they had just told, "Be quiet. Nobody wants to hear from you." They were now saying, "Be of good cheer because Jesus wants to speak to you." So can I tell you who Jesus calls out to? If you feel like you're unworthy, he's calling out to you. If you feel like you're of no value, he's calling out to you. If you feel like that you're unseen, that you're unheard, that nobody even cares anything about you, Jesus is calling out to you, and he is saying, come unto me. Jesus calls out to those who are bound in the chains of anxiety, fear, depression, loneliness, rejection, hopelessness, despair, addiction, and he calls for those who are under the burden of sin. So when Jesus called Bartimaeus, in faith, Bartimaeus threw aside his garment, that garment of no worth, that garment that labeled him and was the symbol of his infirmity, and he jumped up and he went to Jesus. In faith, by throwing his garment aside, he was saying, I may not see yet, but I know that I will be healed, and I will never beg again. And with his persistence, he said, I am getting my miracle today. Some of us need to be bold in faith. We need to press in to Jesus. We need to cry out to Jesus, and we need to be bold and say, today I am receiving my miracle. So Jesus asked Bartimaeus, what do you want me to do? And Bartimaeus said, that I may receive my sight. And then Jesus said, go your way. Your faith has made you well. And immediately Bartimaeus recovered his sight, and he followed Jesus. So the one who was begging on the side of the road would now be walking with Jesus on the road. You know, it's amazing to me that Jesus would never pass through Jericho again after this day with Bartimaeus. And had Bartimaeus not had faith, not had boldness to press through the crowd and to get to Jesus on that day, he would have remained a blind man on the side of the road. So I'm going to stop right here in this story, and I'm going to make this part 1, and then there's going to be a part 2, which I'm going to do a demonstration on how the story of Bartimaeus relates to us today. So I want you to make every effort to watch part 1 and be sure that you don't miss out on part 2. Be blessed.